I don't have a name for this sub-podcast yet, because I can't really think of a pun on Terry Gilliam's name. If we were going to do Coen Brothers, it would have been Coen Through the Motions.
Terry Gilliam, Terry-ific. No, Terry-ific.
Gil I am. Like
Will.I.am.
I like Terry-ific Gilliam-man.
That rolls off the tongue. I think the sponsors are really going to like.
Huh? What? Direct to DVD. So I wanted to start by kind of introducing ourselves as hosts, Adrian. Can you tell me an anecdote that sums up my taste in movies? And I'll start, because I appreciate that is a vague and weird question. I remember we watched Hellraiser together, perfectly fine 80s horror film in a cinema. And we came out and I said, Adrian, what did you think of Hellraiser? And you said, I thought it was very sexual. It's not a sexual film. And that is how I would sum up your taste in movies.
Frankly, I think you lack the literature cognition to recognize that Hellraiser has sexual imagery in it.
Slightly.
What I did say was that because of the similarities between the spokes under the bridge and legs of an open person, and also themes of birth, rebirth, and sex. Now, ask anyone with a sane understanding of cinema or sex. Preferably both.
Okay. How would you sum up my taste in movies then, with an anecdote that shames me and makes me embarrassed?
Well, I wouldn't know how your taste in movies work, because I've only seen you watch movies when you're either high or unbearably drunk.
Tell a story about me being unbearably drunk then.
I believe you tried to punch me at a club on the back of my head, mind you, not the front of my head. That would be too honorful.
You got me kicked out because I was too drunk.
Yes, I did.
You literally walked up to a bouncer and was like, hey, my friend, you didn't probably need to say my friend, this guy I live with, too drunk.
I believe they just came by themselves because you were visibly drunk and also attacking me.
I still remember I had half a beer that I had to leave.
Well, I finished your beer, don't worry about it.
So that's an anecdote that sums me up, which is a nice bridge to the next question. So who's your favorite director? What are some of your favorite films? Describe your taste in movies to me.
This afternoon I've watched Emma. That's where my taste in movies lie. Watching not as many as possible, because that would be insane. I would just be spending my time watching movies and not amounting to anything. As big a repertoire as possible, except for period movies, which I hate, apart from Emma, which is pretty good.
Adrian, how have you been? How have you really been?
Is that a quote from something?
It's a joke.
Oh, well, why is it a joke? Is it funny?
Because instead of saying how have you really been, I'm saying how have you really been? How have you really been?
Well, no, it's not a joke because you explained it, so it's not funny. So thank you.
How have you really been?
I've been good, thank you.
That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking how have you really been?
I've really been good, thank you.
No, I'm saying wheelie. I don't think you're picking up on that. How have you really been?
Wheelie like the shoes?
No, like the bins we have.
Oh!
Used, I mean, you never took it out or put rubbish in it, because that was my job in our house. But the one that was outside our house that you neglected. How have you really been?
I didn't get the reference because English people have to talk to refer to objects like they're fucking children.
And French, they're just telepathic. They can just communicate on another level. Is that right?
Like, oh, look, this bin has wheels on it. Wheelie bin.
What would you call that?
Bin. Just bin.
Yeah, but you have a bin inside the house, and then you have a bin outside the house that you take out and gets picked up by the bin men.
You can use bin for both. If you said take out the bin, you wouldn't take out the small bin.
I would take out the contents of the small bin to the wheelie bin and then put a new bin bag in the regular bin.
Yes, but then you would say something different, like take the trash contents.
Trash is American. Bin. We wouldn't say
sure.
Trash.
Take out the bin is a purely like wheelie bin thing.
You're saying it now. You're saying wheelie bin. So we've won you over to the British.
I'm saying it to describe to your small a brain what I mean.
So yeah, let's talk about Jabberwocky, Adrian.
I best describe it as what Monty Python's The Holy Grail would have been without the rest of the Monty Python cast.
I think, though, Terry Gilliam didn't want comparisons to Monty Python, though. I think he originally listed it as not a Monty Python film because he was like, this needs to stand on its own and be my own kind of separate work.
Of course he does. But the fact of the matter is he did it 2 years after Monty Python. There's a lot of costumes being reused from Monty Python.
Do you think?
You know, the Guardian guard uniform with the rings, I'm sure I've seen that in Monty Python's The Holy Grail. But it's not to say that Jabberwocky is like everything has to be scrapped, right? There's some good bits, some good ideas, but it lacks charm.
I don't know. I'd say that Holy Grail is more kind of a riff on like Arthurian legends and kind of like heroic stories like mythology. And then Jabberwocky is more kind of satirical in places. I don't think it's always completely successful. I think it is trying to say something about society.
Yeah, it is satirical to like capitalism, but so is Monty Python's The Holy Grail. Like you have that part where peasant is saying, "I didn't vote for you" or something. You know, it's not like all black and all white. It's not like Monty Python The Holy Grail is just like Arthurian tales, and Jabberwocky is just like capitalism, but to the epoch.
I'd say Jabberwocky is probably less absurd as well and more kind of like at least grounded. I mean, there is a monster that turns up right at the end of it. Overall, more kind of grounded and like less silly.
But it does take its time too much, I thought. It gets lost, I think, a bit halfway through. The start is great because it's like puts your character into place, the relations to like the fish fingers, to the father, like the father dies, the son is like a shitty businessman that wants to make it big in the city. Great start to your satirical movie. But then you get to the middle of the movie when you switch between the king, Palin, battles between the knights. It gets really confused. Or maybe it was me that was confused. I don't know.
It's possibly. Were you sober watching this movie?
Yes.
So you can't blame it on the drink then.
No, you can though.
Give me a rundown on the plot then.
You start with Michael Palin and his dad making casks. Basically, you get the sense that Michael Palin doesn't know how to do anything because he doesn't know how to do anything. He doesn't know how to make good casks.
They're coopers. They're making barrels. That's what coopers do. They make barrels.
I believe so, yes. Although I don't care. They make barrels, although he doesn't know how to do one because he is too interested in selling barrels than the actual confection of them. He doesn't own anything. His father disowns him as he dies. Very sad moment.
Did you cry?
I shed a tear. I really did. Then we see him interact with the fish finger family, who are, I believe, fish salespeople.
I thought that name was too silly, by the way. Like every time they said fish finger, it kind of took me out of the film.
Something like South Park would do, right? They would call, in South Park, they called some characters like really on the nose.
Like the black kid's called Token because he's the one black kid.
Yeah, exactly. And he is very infatuated with the fish finger daughter called Griselda, who barely replies to him when he has the possibility of becoming a cooper, following in his father's footsteps. As his father disowns him and everyone knows about it, there is no need for the fish finger family to repay Michael Palin in any way. So they're very disinterested in him. He thinks that Griselda loves him. And that follows through until the end of the movie, which I thought was like, all right, I get it. I get the joke. It's fine. You don't have to do it anymore.
I thought that was an interesting character thing, was that he was more interested in this kind of working class, down to earth woman than this princess who is like more traditionally attractive.
She really wasn't down to earth though.
Yeah, she kind of hated him.
I think the joke is that he has no character development. He doesn't learn anything.
He kind of gets forced and put through this like meat machine of a typical like hero's journey kind of arc.
Yeah,
he rejects it at every turn and he just kind of wants to just hang out and try and fuck this fish finger woman. But...
No, that is something that I thought during the screening.
Did you go to a screening of this?
No, I watched it with a friend. Yeah, I did think about that during like, it's the hero's journey, but without any of the progression.
Yeah, like even the monster at the end, the titular Jabberwocky, he kind of just kills by accident, doesn't he?
It's really just a shitty puppet. I mean, that's why they didn't
pretty
show
cool
it.
Creature design. In motion, it looked pretty good.
I'm not discussing like the design because I think it's pretty good, but the design was also inspired by pre-existing works, namely Lewis Carroll. I guess that's also the joke, which is you never show the monster and then at the end you show him for like a brief minute. Well, it feels like the longest minute in your life because nothing's happening while it's on screen.
Do you think it was odd then that this is kind of named after a Lewis Carroll poem? Like the film isn't like a direct adaptation of anything Lewis Carroll. Like why did they make that decision? Was it to like get name recognition and people coming in based on...
I thought for the longest time during the screening, I thought it was going to be a joke, as in the Jabberwocky was never going to appear. It would relate the satirical element of society, which is that it's not actually that there's no monster that causes all this ruckus. It's the economy. More subtly, obviously, than just a guy explaining to you what the moral of the story is. How come the peasants are surviving by themselves in small peasant communities? Because that's how the economy works. Peasants can live isolated to the rest of capital because they possess their own means of production. But as soon as you get to like the cities, everyone relies on each other. And when the king is so opulently rich, the economy obviously suffers. And I thought that's where the movie was going, but actually it was going to a puppet. In the end, it wasn't a joke.
It's not a puppet, it's a guy in a costume.
Oh, is it? Is it a tall guy in a costume, or did they use camera
it's a guy in a costume that's bigger than him to make him look taller. Movie magic, Adrian.
Well, that's crazy.
So that is what I like about watching a film from this period, is that it's all kind of like practical effects, and you can tell that it was done in camera, and you can see kind of like the grainy quality of the film and stuff.
So it's really so grainy. It's horrible.
I like that though. I think it kind of adds to it, doesn't it? There's something about digital film is just so kind of clean.
All digital film looks like porno. Film looks good, but this was shot on low quality film, I would imagine. Because even back
shot
in the
on
day,
a really, really low budget. As you say, I think they might have reused some costumes from Holy Grail.
You know, it feels like it. And it really feels like Terry Gilliam, he wanted to do this movie right. He didn't have a lot of budget. It just fails because no one wants to see a low budget Michael Palin, Terry Gilliam movie except for us. We're actually the first humans to ever see this.
I mean, what I liked about it was it seemed like one person's vision. It seems like Terry Gilliam didn't make it for anyone but himself. Like, he kind of just made the film he wanted to make. Like, it doesn't feel commercial or like a sellout or anything. It would have been very easy to take all that money from Python and kind of just make like a crowd pleaser that people would go and see and wasn't necessarily that good.
Right, but I think there's a middle ground between like making a good movie independently and making a bad movie independently. I'm not saying this is like a horrible movie.
How many of the Terry Gilliam films have you seen?
I've seen Brazil. You can tell it's the same guy doing it. The end felt a lot like Brazil, like contemplative, very grandiose. Like, I think all of Terry Gilliam's movies have bombed. Brazil bombed. Don Quixote, which I saw recently, bombed. Jabberwocky probably bombed. 12 Monkeys.
I feel like 12 Monkeys had its own TV show based on it come out recently.
They would base anything. It didn't bomb. It actually did great. Okay.
So did Time Bandits. Have you seen Time Bandits?
I haven't seen Time Bandits.
Well, that's next.
Why are we doing the worst one first?
We're doing it in order, so we're starting with the first one.
Was that the first one?
He technically co-directed Holy Grail, but I thought that didn't really count as like a solo.
And everyone's talked about Holy Grail way too much anyway.
Take your time. Start over again, Bob.
Humphrey, what are you saying?
What are you saying, Jeff?
What are you saying, Squire? What are you saying?
Just checked the budget for Monty Python and the Holy Grail is like half the budget of Jabberwocky. The budget for Jabberwocky is for 500,000, I think. So I mean, you can see that the Holy Grail is fairly cheap. It works in its advantage, I think, for Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and it works in the disadvantage of Jabberwocky. It would have benefited from a higher budget Jabberwocky. It's a bigger story.
Yeah, and I think it's unfortunate that he decided to do the same kind of setting as Holy Grail, because obviously now everyone's going to compare the two instead of just seeing Jabberwocky as its own thing.
But you got to wonder which one came first, the chicken or the egg? The costumes for Monty Python and the Holy Grail, or the idea of Jabberwocky? Or maybe Jabberwocky came first, like John Cleese or whoever else wanted to do Monty Python and the Holy Grail first. Who knows? I mean, Terry Gilliam probably knows.
So does this feel like a passion project?
Nah. surely wouldn't have expected like a big money intake, right?
I mean, if you went to a studio and said, we've had this massive hit film, Holy Grail, I want to do the same thing again, same setting, they'd probably think like, yeah, that's going to be as successful.
But he didn't do that.
Did he not?
No, because he didn't go to a big studio. He went to Python Films, and
Oh, what's the source on that, bro?
the fact that there's only one other producer and they're not
Oh.
a particularly big name.
Well, maybe Jabberwocky is the last film listed in their career, so maybe it killed their career.
It probably did. You know why? It probably did because it bombed like hell.
Yeah, but I think it probably made money after Terry Gilliam became famous in his own right as a filmmaker, and then I think they re-released it as like Monty Python's Jabberwocky and sold
Oh, did
DVDs
they?
of it.
Oh, yuck.
So it probably eventually made its money back over like decades, but yeah, definitely not successful to start with.
They sold it as Monty. Oh, that's so yucky.
Mm.
It has nothing to do with Monty Python.
I mean, it's got Michael Palin and it's the same setting as Holy Grail, so you could definitely sell it as that. In the same way that like the Asylum make those like riffs on blockbusters like Transmorphers or
But that's the Asylum. You're not expecting quality out of Asylum, are you?
I am.
All right, that's a funny joke. You got one.
So I'm gonna be honest, Adrian. I'm running out of notes over here. I've written down Fred Willard died, but he's not in this film, so I don't know why I wrote that down. If we talk about 1977 in films, what else came out in 1977? The original Star Wars. Do you think if this had been a big box office smash, could it have developed into a franchise like Star Wars did?
No, you don't push these guys, right? Monty Python did really well, especially the Holy Grail and Life of Brian. But you don't see like a Life of Brian 2. I think they've got some integrity, artistic integrity. Saturday Night Fever, 77. Eraserhead, 77. And then The Exorcist 2, which, as we all know, is the better of the three.
You know, that's directed by the same guy who did Zardoz.
Hausu came out in 77.
What list are you looking at? The list, The Exorcist 2 and Hausu on it.
77, sorry, movies on Google.
Well, and Hausu is big enough to be listed on that.
I mean, it's pretty big, man. Suspiria came out in 77. It's a good year for movies.
Well, maybe that's why Jabberwocky got so overshadowed, is because all these other more famous movies got released at the same time.
I'm not sure Suspiria was more famous. I don't think it did well.
I'm not talking about fucking Suspiria. I'm talking about like Star Wars.
Holy shit. It did 1.5 billion in Italy.
I've written, is this a kid's film?
It's a good question. Is this a kid's film? I don't think so. Children could see it. It's not like, it's not vulgar.
There are nipples in it.
Maybe.
No, there are.
Like,
there definitely are. 100%
right.
There are.
Oh shit. Hold on, I gotta concentrate.
How drunk are you, motherfucker?
I just forgot your question. Is it for kids? I don't think so. Because
If you're forgetting my question, then you're pretty pissed, I would say.
Your question was, is it for children? It's not for children. It's not made for children, but children could watch it. Like, they could watch Monty Python and the Holy Grail and not understand any of it.
But I think as a kid, that's kind of like quite thrilling, is to watch something that you kind of know is a bit illicit and like not, that you don't fully understand and you kind of want to aspire to understand it, and that's quite enticing.
I watched Tenacious D, The Pick of Destiny when I was 10, so I understand the process. I didn't understand any of it. I thought it was cool. The music was cool.
And you like the bit where that woman gets her boobs out, right? Like the flasher in the car.
I believe that is very, very quick.
Yeah, and still it stands out.
Does it?
And you like the bit where Jack Black's penis grows large enough to go through like a security laser grid.
I didn't know what that was about. Because
what did you think was happening in that scene?
Because in French, and I think in English they say cock for it. But in French, they say queue, which means tail, which is used to refer to that particular part of the anatomy.
Penis.
I believe is what it is colloquially known as.
Oh, that's scientific, mate.
I believe it is what it is known scientifically. So I was like, wait, but the tail doesn't come from the front, and we don't have tails as humans. That doesn't make sense.
And when do you think that clicked for you? Was there like a night where young Adrian woke up and was like, oh, that was Jack Black's penis?
No. At some point I was like, oh, okay. Because I didn't know any insults when I was 10. I
think there would have been a point in like your late 30s where you're rewatching Tenacious D for like the 40th time, maybe the 400th time, and you saw the shadow of Jack Black's penis as it grows, and you look down at your own meager erection and join the dots between the two.
No, I don't.
Okay.
If that would have happened, if I would have been so oblivious that at 30 I would have not realized it, then I would have not realized it at 30.
I mean, sexual awakenings happen for different people at different times, really.
You privately told me that yours was when you were like 25.
Well, I'm 23 now, so that wouldn't really make sense.
You're only 23.
Yeah, I know the hairline suggests otherwise.
I have friends that are 25 in Cambridge. What does
Are
that
they
tell
more
you
mature
about
than
you?
me?
They're socialists, so
So no.
that's funny, man.
What I like about British comedy is it has this kind of like grimy quality to it. Like everything in the Monty Python films and this film as well is dirty and like horrible and kind of disgusting. And I think American comedy is much more giving you like Hollywood stars with like makeup on and like studio apartment.
I mean, obviously, I'm taking two extremes. If you look at Jack and Jill and this movie, Jabberwocky, it almost has nothing to do in common except for the genre of comedy. Like, one's just a way to make money. Like, I think Jack and Jill cost $60 million to make, but it was mostly like actors being paid enormous amounts. All of the friends from SNL that Adam Sandler has are paid grossly to make Jack and Jill. You can make a really good British comedy on a low budget, but for American Hollywoods to make a good comedy on a low budget is almost a miracle. To have like
You've
a
got
similar
more like independent American films, like something like Clerks or something. That's
just the Hollywood process. Then obviously you have like people have their sensibilities, right? If there's humans, there's comedy and there's art. But if there's Hollywoods, there's the opposite of that. There's laziness and money and just outrage.
yeah, and like studio interference and stuff. Whenever you get a budget that big, you have like investors who need to make their money back and like need to dictate what the film has to be.
Then it becomes like a numbers. As I said 3 years ago about Disney, they only care about numbers. You know, they don't care about gay people.
Obviously, like a massive corporation that exists to eat other corporations and make as much money as possible only care about money, like, because that's their whole like raison d'etre. That's not a crazy
Frankly,
thing to
was
say.
already past its prime.
What was?
Rick and Morty.
I said raison d'etre. I didn't say Rick and Morty.
Oh bruh, Oh bruh, Oh bruh, Oh bruh, Oh bruh, Oh bruh, Oh bruh.
Welcome back to Terry-ific Gilliam-man with me.
I could hear you pissing, by the way.
How was it?
Pissy.
Right. Was it a long one or a short one? Or what do you think?
It was like Secretariat went to take a piss. I had a secret flatmate because I never figured out who it was, although I have my doubts, who just forgot to flush the toilet every time and left the yellowest, most smelly piss every single time.
So what are some jokes that you liked in this film, Adrian? I like the bit they do about the wine to water ratio. I thought it was quite funny. I mean,
Really?
when this is most successful comedically is, I think, when they are channeling Python and kind of just doing Python.
Yeah, that's the thing. When it's good, it's just Python. I kind of like how much the fish fingers are like shitty, the worst kind of people. Like Michael Palin is so oblivious to how horrible these people are, and the fact that he doesn't learn anything in the movie, because it's kind of like two movies going on at the same time, right? It's Michael Palin it's like a New York business guy trying to make his way into the big city.
That's where the comedy lies, isn't it? Is in the juxtaposition of kind of a very modern view of society being imposed upon this medieval society that would be actually in reality like completely different in every way. And that's where the satire comes in.
I understand the process of satire, Joseph. Thank you.
I like the bit right at the start where the first guy gets killed by the Jabberwocky, and it's like it's a shot of his face, but it holds on it as the background's moving around, and you still see his face in like the foreground. I thought that was a cool
and then
effect.
like mangled mess that it left.
Yeah, that was really extreme for no reason. But like his head is completely intact, but his body is just a skeleton, right?
A skeleton with meat on it still. But so you can tell that the guy who made that and like the monster also made Brazil, right?
Are we done talking about Jabberwocky at this point?
We're done talking about Jabberwocky at this point, except if you have any more questions, which I'd be glad to answer in my infinite wisdom.
Was this a Terry-ific film or a Gilliam-man?
This was definitely a Gilliam-man.
And that's the bad one, right?
It's whichever one you want it to be.
Well, when did you first hear about Terry Gilliam?
When he made Don Quixote. It was in 2018. Yeah. Well, I mean, I knew about like Monty Python and Holy Grail. Brazil, I think I had seen by that point. Like, I couldn't put a name to the face, basically.
I mean, what would you say his face looks like?
That's not what I'm not talking about what he looks like.
What does he look like?
I think he's fat and he's got a beard.
Well, he looks like an old man now, as most old men do.
He kind of looks like Orson Welles.
Terrence Vance Gilliam.
Oh God, he looks like Orson Welles.
So you excited for the rest of this podcast? If we are going to keep going, I don't know if you want to continue. The next one would be Time Bandits. Then
3 Bandits.
Time Bandits, not 3 Bandits. Fuck you.
3 Time Bandits. All right.
Do you know what Time Bandits is about though? Before we wrap up.
Oh shit! Hold on.
Sean Connery's in it. It's about time travel and little people and a massive floating holographic face.
Let me read the synopsis. A young boy accidentally joins a band of time-traveling dwarves as they jump from era to era looking for treasure to steal. Oh yeah, Shelley Duvall! I'm in it now.
And John Cleese.
And John Cleese.
And Michael Palin making his return.
And Catherine Hellmans.
No, but there's a lot of like animation that they did in Python. They bring a lot of that back. There was a little bit of that in Jabberwocky, but not a huge amount.
It's him that does the animation.
So how much animation is there in Jabberwocky? There's a little bit, isn't there? But not
very, very few. But it's that idea, like that type of animation is interesting. I like that animation.
Because again, it's like the practical thing where you can tell that it's been like hand drawn and painstakingly kind of assembled, rather than just like a team of like 200 CGI nerds who they've locked in a basement and paid like £3 to.
People in India just like mass producing horrible animation.
Or like video game development where they're like, it has to come out on a certain date and we're not going to pay you anymore, but you have to work overtime to finish it for this date.
Or else we're killing your entire family if you're not doing this like minion animation.
If you refuse to animate Trolls World Tour, we will kill your entire family.
I'll see you next week for Terry-ific Gilliam-man.